I never thought I'd be telling this story to anyone, but after what happened 2 months ago, I can't sleep right anymore. My wife thinks I need therapy or something, but how do you explain this shit to a doctor? My name's Garrett, and I've been driving trucks for about 15 years now. Started right after high school when my dad got me into it. Nothing fancy, just hauling loads from point A to point B across the country. I drive for a smaller company called Mountain Vista Logistics out of Denver. We're not like those big corporations. Most of the time it's pretty boring work, which is how I like it. This whole thing started on a Tuesday morning in October. I remember because my neighbor's dog had been barking all night, and I was already tired before I even got to the yard. The dispatcher, this guy named Rick, who always smells like cigarettes, handed me the paperwork for a sealed pallet load going from Denver to Jacksonville, Florida. 3 days on the road, decent pay. The warehouse guys loaded it up while I did my pre-trip inspection. When they backed the trailer up to my truck, I caught this faint smell. Kind of like laundry detergent, you know? Fresh and clean. I figured it was soap or cleaning supplies or something like that. The manifest just said household goods, which could mean anything. Rick told me the load was already sealed and not to mess with it. Company policy. The doors had this heavy-duty lock on them that looked brand new, all shiny silver metal. I signed the papers and hit the road. First day was normal. Drove through Kansas, stopped at a truck stop in Salina for dinner. Had this terrible meatloaf that sat in my stomach like a rock. The smell from the trailer was still there, but not as strong. On long hauls, smells change anyway. Sometimes they get stronger, sometimes they fade. Didn't think much of it. I parked for the night at a rest area outside Topeka. Nothing fancy, just a parking lot with some picnic tables and bathrooms that always smell like piss. I do my usual routine, check the trailer, make sure everything's secure, then climb into my sleeper cab. I was reading this book about fishing when I fell asleep. Around 3 in the morning, something woke me up. At first I thought it was just trucks passing by on the highway, but then I heard it again. This soft coughing sound coming from behind me, from the direction of my trailer. I laid there listening for maybe 10 minutes. The sound came and went, cough, cough, then nothing for a while. Then it would start again. I figured it was probably a raccoon or something that got into the trailer somehow. Happens more than you'd think. But then I heard something else. Something that made my skin crawl. It sounded like crying. Soft, muffled sobs. I sat up in my bunk and really listened. The highway was pretty quiet at that hour, so I could hear clearly. It was definitely coming from my trailer, and it wasn't an animal. I grabbed my flashlight and climbed out of the cab. The air was cold, and there was this weird fog hanging around the parking lot. I walked around to the back of the trailer and put my ear against the door. The crying stopped. I waited there for maybe 5 more minutes, but didn't hear anything else. Started thinking maybe I was just tired and hearing things. Stress does weird stuff to your brain, you know? I went back to my cab, but couldn't fall asleep. Every little sound had me sitting up and listening. Morning came and I figured I'd dreamed the whole thing. Grabbed coffee and a breakfast sandwich at a gas station, checked my route, and kept driving. The smell from the trailer seemed different now. Still like detergent, but with something else underneath. Something sour. Second night, I parked at a truck stop outside Nashville. Did the same routine, but this time I walked around the trailer more carefully. Checked the lock, looked for any holes or damage. Everything looked normal. The lock was still shiny and new, but that night, around 2 a.m., I heard it again. The coughing and crying. This time it was clearer. Definitely a person. Someone was in my fucking trailer. I got dressed and grabbed my tire iron. My hands were shaking as I walked to the back of the trailer. The sounds stopped as soon as I got close, like whoever was in there could hear me walking. I tried the lock, but it wouldn't budge, solid as a rock. I banged on the trailer door and shouted, "Hey, anyone in there?" Nothing. I called out again, "If someone's in there, make some noise." After a minute, I heard 3 soft knocks from inside. Tap, tap, tap. My heart was beating so fast I thought I might pass out. Someone was definitely in there, and they were trying to communicate. But how the hell did they get in? The trailer had been sealed since Denver. I pulled my truck around to where the trailer lights would shine on the back doors. That's when I noticed something I'd missed before. There was a small gap at the bottom of the trailer, right where the floor met the doorframe. It was tiny, maybe just wide enough for someone to slip a hand through. I got down on my knees with my flashlight and looked through the gap. I could see part of the floor inside, and it looked wrong somehow. Like there was a section that didn't match the rest. I spent the next hour trying to figure out how to get in. The lock was impossible to cut without proper tools. But then I remembered something. These older trailers sometimes have loose panels or access points for maintenance. I walked along the side of the trailer, checking every rivet and seam. About halfway up on the left side, I found a panel that felt different. When I pushed on it, it gave a little. With some work, I managed to pry it open just enough to squeeze through. Inside the trailer was pitch black except for my flashlight beam. The smell hit me right away. That detergent smell mixed with sweat and something else I didn't want to think about. The load was just like the manifest said, pallets wrapped in plastic, stacked neat and tidy. But when I looked at the floor where I'd seen that gap, I could tell something was off. There was a section that looked newer than the rest, like it had been cut out and put back. I found a crowbar in my toolkit and pried up the floor panel. Underneath was this narrow crawl space, maybe 2 feet high and 4 feet wide. And curled up inside was a person, a young woman, maybe early 20s. She was unconscious, but breathing. Her clothes were torn and dirty, no shoes, lips cracked from dehydration. When I shined the light on her face, she opened her eyes and tried to say something, but her voice was just a whisper. I helped her out of the crawl space. She was so weak she could barely sit up. I gave her some water from my truck and tried to get her to talk, but all she kept saying was Jacksonville, Jacksonville, over and over. Jacksonville. That was my destination. My phone had no service at the truck stop, so I couldn't call 911. The nearest town was about 20 miles away. I was trying to figure out what to do when the woman grabbed my arm and pointed at the trailer. "More," she whispered. "There's more." I went back and checked the crawl space again. It was empty, but I found scratches on the walls. Tally marks, like someone keeping track of days. I drove straight to the nearest hospital and called the cops from there. They took the woman and started asking me all kinds of questions. The trailer got impounded as evidence. When I finally got through to dispatch the next morning, Rick answered the phone. I told him what happened, expecting him to be shocked or worried. Instead, he just said, "You need to pick up that trailer and finish the delivery. Company's losing money on delays." I told him I wasn't going anywhere until the police finished their investigation. That's when he got nasty. Said if I didn't get back on the road, I'd lose my job. I hung up on him and called Highway Patrol from a diner. Told them the whole story again. They said they'd handle it. 2 weeks later, I was back home in Denver when I found something that still gives me nightmares. I was changing sheets in my sleeper cab when I found a Polaroid photo tucked under the mattress. It was a picture of that crawl space, the exact same one I'd opened. But in the photo, you could see someone's hand holding the camera, taking the picture from above. Someone had known I would look. Someone had been watching which trucks carried which loads, and they'd been in my cab while I was sleeping. I quit Mountain Vista the next day. Haven't driven long haul since. The police never found who was behind it, but they did find 2 more hidden compartments in other trailers from the same company. Sometimes I wonder how many loads I hauled over the years without knowing what was really inside. How many times someone was watching me, taking pictures, planning. I still have that Polaroid. My wife wants me to throw it away, but I can't. It's proof that this really happened. Proof that there are people out there doing things you can't imagine. And sometimes, late at night, I still hear that soft, coughing sound. I've been driving trucks for about 12 years now. Name's Daryl, and I haul freight mostly between Phoenix and Denver. Never had any major problems until what happened last October. So this one particular run, I was coming down through the mountains outside Flagstaff with a full load of auto parts. My dispatcher, Rick, had been on my ass all week about staying on schedule. The company was losing contracts left and right. About 30 miles out from town, I started noticing my brakes felt weird. You know that spongy feeling when you press the pedal and it goes down too easy? I pulled over at this little truck stop to check things out, but everything looked normal from the outside. I called dispatch, and Rick picks up on the first ring. I told him about the brake situation, and he goes quiet for a few seconds. Then he starts going on about how we can't afford another delay, how the client is already pissed. He says if I can make it to Flagstaff, they'll get it fixed there. Looking back, I should have just said no. But money was tight, and I needed this job. My neighbor's dog had been barking all night for weeks, and I wasn't sleeping well. Maybe that affected my judgment. So I get back on the road, taking it real easy on the downhill sections. The truck felt okay for a while. I even started thinking maybe it was just my imagination. But then I hit this really steep grade about 15 miles outside town, and the brake pedal started feeling worse. I was going maybe 45 in a 55 zone, trying to use my engine brake as much as possible. There was this blind curve coming up that I'd driven hundreds of times before. Sharp right turn with trees on both sides. I started pressing the brake pedal to slow down for the turn. The pedal went straight to the floor. I mean completely. No resistance at all. I pumped it a few times, but nothing. I grabbed the emergency brake, but it barely slowed the truck down with that heavy load. I'm coming into this blind curve way too fast now, maybe 55 miles per hour. I can see my headlights hitting the trees, and I'm thinking this is it. Then I came around the curve, and there was this cyclist right in the middle of my lane. I had maybe 2 seconds to react. The guy was wearing bright yellow gear, looked like he was in his 30s. He turned and looked right at me, and I could see his face clearly in my headlights. I yanked the wheel hard to the left, but there wasn't enough time. I felt the truck hit him. There was this awful sound, kind of like hitting a large animal, but different. I managed to get the truck stopped about a quarter mile down using the ditch and some trees. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely turn off the engine. I sat there for maybe 30 seconds, just trying to process what had happened. The weird thing was how quiet everything got after. No birds, no wind, nothing. Just this dead silence that felt wrong somehow. And the smell. Burnt rubber mixed with something else I didn't want to think about. I walked back to where it happened, expecting to find the worst. But when I got there, I couldn't see the cyclist anywhere. There was some damage to my front bumper, and one headlight was busted. But no body, no blood, nothing. I called 911, but before the ambulance showed up, these two guys in plain white trucks arrived. They weren't cops or EMTs, just regular guys in jeans and work shirts. They said they were company investigators and that I should stay put. One of them, this older guy with gray hair, took my keys and started looking over my truck. The other one was wiping down surfaces inside the cab with some kind of cloth. They found the cyclist about 50 yards into the woods and wrapped everything up in this big tarp. The gray-haired guy comes back and tells me they're handling everything. Says the company lawyer is on his way and they're going to work out a quiet resolution. No criminal charges, no lawsuit, just keep my mouth shut and everything will be fine. A month later, I got this settlement offer in the mail. $50,000 and a non-disclosure agreement. All I had to do was sign some papers saying there was no criminal fault on my part. But that's when the weird shit started happening. I was sleeping in my bunk at this truck stop outside Albuquerque when I woke up around 3 in the morning. There was this muddy hiking boot sitting right next to my pillow. Just one boot covered in dried mud and leaves. I'd never seen it before in my life. I threw it outside and tried to go back to sleep, but I kept thinking about it. Where the hell did it come from? My cab had been locked, and I always keep my curtains closed. The next morning, I found a photograph taped to my sun visor. It was a picture of the cyclist I'd hit, except he was standing next to a different truck. Same yellow gear, same face, but this photo looked like it was taken weeks before the accident. I tried to access the settlement documents on my email, but they were gone. Just vanished. When I called the company about it, the dispatcher was real polite but distant, said they had no record of any incident involving my truck. I went to the local police in Flagstaff, but they acted like they'd never heard of any bicycle accident on that road. The officer kept checking his computer and saying he couldn't find any reports. That's when I started putting the pieces together. The brake failure felt too convenient, happening right before that curve. Those company investigators showing up so fast, like they were already in the area. And that photograph? How did someone get a picture of the cyclist before the accident? I think my truck was used to cover up something else. Maybe someone else killed that guy, and they needed it to look like an accident. My brake line could have been cut, and when I came around that curve, the cyclist was already dead. The fucked up part is, I can't prove any of it. The settlement papers are gone, the police have no records, and the company acts like nothing ever happened. I quit that company 3 months later, but sometimes, late at night when I'm driving through mountain roads, I still think about that cyclist's face in my headlights, like he was trying to tell me something. I don't know what really happened that night, but I know I didn't just hit some random guy on a bike. There was something bigger going on, and I was just the fall guy they needed. My name is Claire Ruiz. I drove big trucks for 10 years. I am not good at fancy words. This happened to me. I still think about it, and it keeps me awake sometimes. It started in Houston. A dispatcher called about a sealed tanker. He said, "Non-hazardous industrial wash. Quick run to Cleveland." The tanker looked clean. It had a label and seals. I signed the papers and drove. For 3 weeks, I ran the route. Small towns, long nights, nothing special. Then I noticed small things. At a diner in Ohio, a woman at the counter went quiet when I walked in. She stared at me like I smelled bad. The floorboards there creaked when anyone walked. I told myself people are tired. I ate my sandwich and left. At another stop in Columbus, a woman clipped her words and watched my arms. I thought I must smell like diesel or coffee. The rain that week never stopped. My wipers worked hard. I tried not to worry. By the end of week 3, my throat started to burn. It felt sore and raw. Small red bumps showed up on my forearms. I went to a clinic in Akron. They gave me antihistamines and told me to drink water. Probably contact, the nurse said. I rinsed and tried to sleep. I forgot to take my laundry out, and the truck smelled musty for days. I opened the paperwork to file a claim. The original bill was there. Then I saw another manifest stamped over it. Someone had placed a newer sheet on top. I peeked under it, and the numbers were different. My hands shook. I did not know why anyone would do that. I called my boss, and I sent emails. The messages bounced back. Phones went to voicemail and never came back. The dispatcher who first called me stopped answering. The people at the office acted like nothing was wrong when I saw them in person. On paper, they were gone. One afternoon, I stopped at a municipal plant near Cleveland to ask questions. The tech, Mateo, looked at the manifest and said it matched a known illicit waste stream. He used simple words and was quiet. They moved dirty loads with clean paper, he said. He told me some disposal companies used fake manifests. His voice made me cold. He seemed sorry when he said it. I parked at a rest stop in Indianapolis on a rainy night. When I came back to the truck, I found a small vial under my windshield wiper. It had a blue cap. There was a folded note with a code. The code matched numbers I had seen in the manifest. I picked up the vial with bare fingers. I know that was dumb. I was tired and wet. I put it in my jacket pocket and drove on. I took the vial to a sheriff in Kentucky. He looked at it like it was trouble. A detective took photos and asked questions. I told the truth. They told me they would test it. Later, a lab tech called and said the sample matched an illegal chemical waste profile. He said the kind of stuff companies hide. He said disposers sometimes use creative paperwork. He sounded tired when he said that. After that, I tried to report it to regulators. Emails bounced. Numbers were dead. I went to city offices and clerks shrugged and said they had no record. It felt like someone was removing tracks. My calls ended with clicks, not answers. Small things kept happening. Every diner I stopped at had someone look at me wrong. Men in cheap suits showed up near truck stops. Once a man followed me for several exits. I watched him in my mirror. He was too clean for the highway. At a light, he got out and walked toward me. I pulled into a gas station, and he did not come. That night, static came on my CB radio, and then one word: watch. Paperwork began to show up in strange places. Old manifests slid under my motel door. A stamped envelope with my truck number came to my sister's house in Atlanta. I found new papers taped to the inside of my fuel log. It was like someone could put paperwork on me like a sticker. The worst night was simple. I ate at a diner outside Milwaukee. The place smelled like coffee. A server named Olivia sat down across from me. She put a stack of papers on the table without asking. Her hands trembled a little. "This is for you," she said. On top was a manifest with the same code from the vial. Her eyes looked wet. She said, "They want you to know they can put paper on you." I left my coffee and drove until dark. After that, a tire blew on I-94 in a rainstorm. I pulled over and sat on the bumper. Nimbus, my little cat, crawled into my jacket and slept. I opened the manifest again. Inside was a torn receipt and a note that read, "Stop looking." I laughed a little then. It was a bad laugh. I went on. Some days I stopped driving. I tried to be normal. I worked a short job in a parts shop near Detroit, but the paper chase kept finding me. I got a letter with a vial and a code in the mail once. I buried it in a coffee can behind the garage. I kept copies of manifests in a box under the bed, but I only opened them when I had to. I was scared of what I might find. I wanted help. I wanted someone to fix the paper. Instead, I got more questions. People at the disposal companies would look at me like I was a small problem, then look away. Emails still returned. Numbers stayed dead. A man in a suit told me on the CB, "You got eyes now." I did not know if he meant watch or be watched. Some parts are fuzzy to me now. I remember driving through Ohio and seeing a tanker pulled off with police around it. I remember a man in a lab coat looking at my manifest in a fluorescent room and saying, "This has been moved before." I remember my sister telling me to get off the road. I remember nights when Nimbus hissed at the door and I pretended not to hear. Sometimes I go back to places where I stopped. I sit outside a diner and watch faces. I hate being watched, but I watch back. I think about the little things I missed and how small they looked then. I keep watching. I do not have answers. I do not know who put the vial on my truck or who changed the manifests. I do not know how deep the paper trail goes. I tried to hand everything to the right people. The right people were not always there. What I know is this: sometimes you haul a load that looks clean, and it is not. Sometimes a paper can hide a thing that will follow you. Sometimes people make clean papers for dirty work, and then they act like nothing happened. If you work on the road, trust your gut. If a diner goes quiet when you walk in, do not stay. If you find a vial under your wiper, call someone who knows what to do and do not touch it again. I am in Detroit now. I sell parts. Nimbus sleeps at my feet. On rainy nights, I still hear a tanker on the highway, and I sit up. I keep a paper box under the bed and do not open it at night. I do not want to be a driver in their story. I am telling you this because someone should know. I am not a hero. I am a person who drove and learned that the road keeps secrets.